Good evening. We are going to start our next lesson. Today's learning goal is that students will be able to use the order of operations to evaluate numerical expressions. You remember our last lesson was about what numerical expressions were. Now we're going to evaluate them. So let's talk a little bit about some of the new vocabulary we have. The first term is evaluate, and in math, when we talk about evaluating um, an expression, we're talking about determining what the value of that expression is. Other words that we might use, sometimes we say to simplify, sometimes we say to solve. Um, so if you see these words, know that we're going to try to find out what the value of something is, usually an expression. The other new vocabulary we have is order of operations. The order of operations tells us the order that we perform operations in a numerical expression. There are some things we do first, and then on down the line, and then there are some things we do last. That order of operations, we have a saying that helps us solve that. That saying is, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." Sometimes people use the letters of the first letter of each of the words in the order, and they get the acronym PIMDAS. So either way is a good way of remembering it. The table up here will help you remember. This will be one of those things you do need to copy down into your notes so that you can refer back to it. The P, or the please, stands for parentheses. So we're going to do any operation that's inside of parentheses, and that includes brackets. In a later lesson, we'll be adding brackets as another grouping method, and we'll be doing those parentheses and brackets first. After we do our parentheses, the next group of problems that we'll solve are anything that has an exponent. We're going to turn any exponential number into a standard form number. The next step, it says MD, or multiplication and division. You can do either one of those in order, and we normally work from the left to the right just like you read. So if multiplication is to the left of division, you do the multiplication first. If division is to the left of multiplication, you do the division first. So you go start from the left, read across, and you do it in the order from left to right. And so what you do last is addition and subtraction. Again, you work left to right, so if addition is to the left, you do that first. If subtraction is to the left, we do that first. So for multiplication, division, and addition and subtraction, you're going to work left to right and do those in that order. So we're going to evaluate some expressions and some sample problems so that you can see how we can apply the order of operations to evaluate or simplify numerical expressions. The first expression is 24 divided by parentheses 10 minus 2 parentheses times 2 to the third power. Okay, so I have my notes here. You see that I've copied my learning goal up at the top of the notes. I also have my heading at the top of my notes, and then in the right hand section we're going to be working out this first sample problem. So the first sample problem, we're going to use our order of operations. The first thing we do is P, which is for parentheses, and we see that we have 10 minus 2, so we're going to evaluate that first, and we know that 10 minus 2 is equal to 8, and then everything else we just bring down. So I bring down the 24, bring down the division sign, bring down the times sign, and bring down the 2 to the third power. So we look at our new expression, and we see that in the new expression there's no more parentheses, so we go to the next step, which is exponents. We see here Then we have 2 to the third power. Remember the third power tells us how many times we're going to multiply the factor. In this case, the factor is 2. So to evaluate that, we're going to multiply 2 times 2 times 2. We're going to multiply 2 3 times. When we do that, we get 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. And then again, we bring down all the rest of the symbols. We're going to bring down the times sign, we're going to bring down the 8, and we're going to bring down the 24 in the division sign. So now we're going to look, there's no more exponents, so we're ready to move on to multiplication and division. We start from the left, so we're going to start at 24 and work our way across and see that the first operation is the division operation. So we're going to divide 24 divided by 8, and that's equal to 3. And then again, we bring down the rest of our operators and numbers, and then we continue working across, and we see there's a times sign. So now we're going to do 3 times 8. When we do that, we're going to get 24. Since we have no more operators left in our problem, we have just evaluated this expression, and it equals 24. So let's look at our second problem. Our second sample problem is 88 minus 32 times parentheses 9 minus 7 in parentheses. Okay, so we have done sample 2, or we have written down sample 2. We start with our order of operations. Order of operations P, or parentheses, come first. So we look across here and we see we have parentheses here, so we're going to do that first. 9 minus 7 is equal to 2, and then bring down everything else, so that 88 minus 32 times, and then we're going to times that times 2. The next thing we look for is exponents. We look across here, no exponents, so we can skip that step. So if there's not something there, we can skip it. The next thing is multiplication and division, so we look across here and we see our multiplication here, so that's going to be our next step. So we're going to do 32 times 2, and the answer to that is 64. And then we bring down the rest of our numbers, 88 and the minus. And so our last operation is addition and subtraction. Well, we have subtraction right here, so we're going to evaluate that. 88 minus 64 is 24. So let's look at our third sample problem, and our third sample problem is parentheses 8 times 3 in parentheses plus parentheses 7 minus 2 in parentheses. Okay, so we write down the problem, 8 times 3 plus 7 minus 2, and we look. The first step we know is parentheses. We have two sets of parentheses, so we're going to start with the one on the left first. We're going to do 6 times 3, and the answer there is 24. We're going to do the second set of parentheses, 7 minus 2, which is 5. And then we're going to bring down the operator. Then we look, the next step is exponents. None of these numbers here have exponents. The next step is multiplication and division. There's no multiplication or division operators there, so we're going to skip that step as well. And then the next step is addition and subtraction, and you see we have an addition sign. So we're going to go ahead and add these two numbers, and we get an answer of 29. And so we're going to work one more sample problem. This one is 3 to the 4th power minus parentheses 9 times 7 in parentheses plus 4 to the 2nd power. Okay, so we have copied down the problem here and we'll get started. The first step is parentheses, and we see we have a set of parentheses. So we're going to multiply 9 times 7 and get 63. And we're going to bring down everything else. So we have 3 to the 4th power and a minus sign. And we have plus 4 to the 2nd power. The next thing we do is exponents, and we see that we have two sets of exponents. So we'll start on the left. We have 3 to the 4th power, and we're going to split that up, and that's going to look like 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And we do 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, we get 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 27 times 3 is 81. Our second exponent is 4 to the 2nd power, so that's the same thing as 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. And then we have to bring down the operator, so we have a minus sign we need to bring down. We have the number 63 that we need to bring down. And we have the plus sign that we need to bring down. So the next step, we've done our parentheses and exponents. Now we need to do multiplication and division. We look across, there is no multiplication and division, so we skip that step. The last step then is addition and subtraction. We go left to right. So the first thing we have is a subtraction problem. So we do 81. So I'm going to write this over on the side. 81 minus 63. And I know that I have to borrow. That makes that 11. So 11 minus 3 is 8. 7 minus 6 is 1. So that's going to be evaluated as 18. And then we're going to bring down the plus, bring down the 16. So now I have 18 plus 16. 8 and 6 is 14, plus the 1 and the other one. So that's going to be 34. Okay, so the last types of sample problems we're going to do is we're going to rewrite the expression with parentheses to equal a given value. So what does this look like? Well, they're going to give you an expression, but there's no parentheses in it, and they want you to use the parentheses to group it together so that it ends up with a value of 141. Okay, so I've gone ahead and copied down the problem into my notes, and I want to look at it a little bit and see what is the best way to solve this. So I can put parentheses over certain numbers. I can put parentheses around the 8 and the 3. I can put parentheses around the 12 and the 8. I can put parentheses around the 6 and the 6 and the 12. And when I do that, it's going to change the value each time. So let's look at one of these. Let's put the parentheses around the 6 and the 12. We know that 6 plus, we do the parentheses first because of the order of operations, and so we do the 6 plus 12 is equal to 18. Bring down the times, bring down the 8, and bring down the minus 3. We then do exponents. Well, there are no exponents, so we skip that step. Then we do multiplication and division. We see that we have 18 times 8. So over here on the side, I'm going to work that out. So I got 18 times 8. 8 times 8 is 64. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 6 is 14. So when I work that out, I'm going to get 144. And then I'm going to subtract 3. So 144 minus 3 is 141. Well, I got it right on the first try. If you don't get it right on the first try, that's okay. Just go back and move the parentheses either around the 12 and the 8, or move the parentheses around the 8 and the minus 3. Use your order of operations to solve and see what you get. And so let's do one more sample problem like that, and then we'll move on to our practice problems. This sample problem is 5 plus 28 divided by 7 minus 4. And we want the value of that expression to be 11, and so we're going to have to put parentheses in there to make that happen. Okay, so I have written the problem down again. 5 plus 28 divided by 7 minus 4. And now we need to put parentheses in there in order to help us solve that problem. In this case, what I think we need to do, because we can start off putting parentheses anywhere, but what I think we need to do is, I know that if I have 5 plus 28, that's going to give me 33. And I know that if I do 7 minus 4, that's going to give me 3. So I'm going to try to group those two together. So in this example, I'm going to have two sets of parentheses. So I have 5 plus 28, doing my parentheses first based on the order of operations, which gives me a 33. I have 7 minus 4, again using my order of operations. That gives me a 3. And then I'm going to bring down the division sign. Order of operations says do exponents next. There are no exponents, so we skip that step. The next step is multiplication and division. We see the first thing we have is division, so we'll do that. And we get 33 divided by 3, which is 11. And we check our value against what we're looking for, and that is correct. We were looking for 11 and we got 11. So we did that correct. So when you're working these types of problems, understand you may need to group two sets of numbers. It may not just work by grouping one set of numbers. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video. Work out these 4 practice problems. When you're done with the 4 practice problems, restart the video and check your answers and make sure that you're doing them correctly. Alright, so check your answers. For problem number 1, the answer is 8. For problem number 2, the answer is 29. For problem number 3, the answer is 36. And then for problem number 4, the answer is 12 plus 17 minus, and then the parentheses 3 times 2 in parentheses. So the parentheses should go around the 3 times 2. Alright, well, that does it for tonight's lesson. Please bring any questions you have to class tomorrow, and you have a nice evening.